It's match number 1 time here in the Asia-Pacific region of Grandmasters. Day number 2 of this week, and we have Pathra versus Alutemu coming right up for you. And, you know, I'm excited for this one because Alutemu did stumble yesterday. He did have a bit of a hiccup, and it's not the first time across multiple seasons of Grandmasters, of course. But let's take a look at the picks, or the shield, should I say. Sorry, so used to saying picks and bans. The shields and the bans. And Alutemu's makes sense to me, shielding that priest, getting rid of Pathra's priest. But Pathra, I have questions. Because, one, priest isn't shielded, so I think it's wrong in general. But the shield of druid, looking at Alutemu's priest, zoo, and battlecry shaman lineup that's left after a warrior ban, seems very, very strange to me. Does she know something we don't, Derek?
Very possibly. I have to assume so, to be honest, because I'm with you. I don't really see the reasoning behind a druid shield here because, well, like you said, zoo, priest, and shaman, that's like 2 bad matchups, and shaman, which is like, you know, reasonable on both sides, I think. To be honest with Pathra, I really wouldn't have been too surprised to see not even a priest shield, but a warrior shield, because warrior against zoo, you know, say what you like about the matchup. Some people like to say it's closer than, you know, it's closer than people think. I think it's still pretty warrior favored. It's still a good matchup for the warrior. It's all right against the priest, and in my opinion, in what we've seen so far, it's also all right against the shaman.
I think I got it. I think it makes sense if you think Alutemu is going to shield the warrior.
Right.
Because it does, you know, then warrior ends up playing potentially versus zoo and ends up playing versus priest, which you can argue, depending on what you think about the strength of warrior in those matchups, is favored if you go warrior. So you want the druid because the druid would have been banned if Alutemu shields warrior. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
If Alutemu shields warrior, you want your druid.
He then has his priest banned, and
then you get druid versus warrior. Potentially.
Maybe, yeah.
But I'm just saying, I'm not saying I agree with the overall strategy.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
We can take a look at the list in a second. But I'm not saying I agree with the overall strategy. But if you think your opponent will shield warrior with that lineup, then you want your druid in the pool, right?
Even then, I don't know if I'd really like Pathra's druid against the warrior. Like, it doesn't run... it's a little bit lighter. It doesn't run King Feoris, as we can see here. Oh no, sorry, he had his warrior banned away, so he would have been able to play double Plague of Wrath, you know, Super Collider, double Brawl. It's a pretty removal-heavy version.
And I think regardless, what we can say is the plan may have been there, but the outcome does not favor Pathra.
I don't think so.
Because Pathra now has a druid versus, I mean, she doesn't have to play it, but a shielded druid versus zoo, priest, and battlecry shaman, which looks unfun, as far as I'm concerned, at least with my druid knowledge.
She does, however, have a couple of good matchups. That warrior is looking very nice for Pathra, as we can see up against the shaman, priest, and warlock. As we said, just a few good matchups there. And, you know, while she didn't shield it, which I think I would have probably preferred to have seen, it's still able to be played. It's the same as if it had been shielded in this instance, because it wasn't banned away by Alutemu, who just figures that the priest is even more threatening than a warrior that's very good against his lineup.
Well, that's the question, right? With all this strategy, you boil it down to, does Pathra having a druid that she might not play hurt her because she won't get to play priest? Is that going to hurt her enough to lose the match? We don't know. We're going to find out soon. That's why we play the game. But what's interesting to me as well is this control warrior is that funky control warrior list that I loved watching yesterday. Admirable's disbelief. Did we watch him when that happened?
I did watch a little bit,
they looked at it, it's like, oh, well, you know, he's still got 2 Omega Devastators left in the deck, along with this. And then Sol's like, there's no Omega Devastators in this list. And Admirable could not believe it. And I'm kind of with him. I mean, I already knew that they weren't in the list, so I was shocked at that point. But I'm kind of with him. I get the benefit of Whirlwind and the benefit of some of this other version of the build, but Omega Devastator, I feel like, is something you have as not a bad card in the matchups you're teching for, and a great card in the matchups you're not. And in this format, you can't guarantee, okay, this warrior is going to play against this deck I've teched for and win. Never mind about all the other decks.
I don't know if I actually agree with you. I think if ever there was a time to remove a Mega Devastator, now would be the time to do so, actually. Yeah, because if you think about it, I think the point of this warrior that's very often got double Plague of Wrath, double Brawl, is to be a version that's good against Druid and good against Priest. I think they're trying to go for a double-pronged attack where they can take on both of those decks, because Plague of Wrath is fantastic against Priest, and it's also fantastic against the Druids in the late game to remove all their stuff. And if you think against Druids, a Mega Devastator is, honestly, I think, a fairly poor card. If you play it on curve, it just gets hit with a Oasis Surge, a value traded, so it's very poor being played on curve the majority of the time.
Interesting.
And then late game, you know, killing off one of their minions, it's good. It's still good, but I think Plague of Wraths are better.
Do you think that's the leading on now as we're slowly piecing a puzzle together as the game is obviously underway? Do you think that's why the Warrior was banned then? Because against Warrior, you can't just not run Mega Devastators. Although saying that, Alutemu was in the same Warrior list as Pathra. So it would have been an exact mirror, which again boggles my mind. But anyway, we can delve in. If Pathra wins the match, we can ask her all these questions, which will be fun. So let's go into this one though. Game number 1 of the first series of the day. Alutemu on the top on the combo Priest, and Pathra on the bottom on this altered Control Warrior.
Already a very, very difficult decision coming through for Alutemu here, with coin-injured Tolvir, as opposed to, I mean, what looked like a somewhat simple curve, at least at first glance, of Tolvir into coin Psycho Bomb. The problem then arises, of course, that it may not die. The Tolvir may not die going into your turn 3 when you go coin Psycho Pomp, which I think is probably the main reason why he went for the coin Tolvir here, especially as he wants to get them down before the Restless Mummy comes into play, which makes sense to me.
And I really like the second Tolvir here.
Same.
It is actually impossible that these die.
Both of them die. Yeah,
is it possible that one of them? Wait, hang on, let me double check the list. Oh, there's there's 2 weapons project. So there's a chance
weapons
that one of them
shield
dies.
slam.
Yeah.
So like, it's possible for both of them to die.
But slim.
Unlikely.
And
yes,
the payoff with the 2 Nephset, with the Nephset rich list on both is
pretty
absurd.
nuts.
But again, you start to see, and I'm going to ask you, we talked a lot about matchups with Priest, and nothing really feels favored. Is this exact build of Warrior actually favored versus Priest?
Very
there's
possibly.
The Spellbreaker, there's the Whirlwind, there's the double weapons project, there's the double shield block. You know, there's the 4/1/1s, which I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah.
It looks good to me.
I think so too, and I think when you pair that with the fact that Alutemu is not running Bon Samdi in his build of Priest, those things coming together I think probably does mean a Priest that's a Warrior that's relatively favoured against Priest. It can still do things like this, which are obviously extremely
Priest can
powerful.
still get you. That's not going to change anytime soon.
But as we can see here, Pathra kind of has all avenues checked at the moment. This chip damage she's taking of 6 a turn, or 4 a turn of course after she goes in with the Restless Mummy, is not that bad. Even if Psychopomp comes down, like Brawl to clear it off.
Okay, this is Caster Vision, right? So imagine it's not.
Yes.
Is there ever a reason to trade halfway between both?
Oh, right.
To lower their health? Because the problem is, with that turn, I guess the Spellbreaker's there, which makes all the difference. But with that turn, there's still a 6 health minion on the board, in which Divine Spirit in a fire, that's a problem. That's a 12/12, right? So, and I know, yes, it would have been better because Psycho Pomp's in hand, so on. But, is there a valid reason for doing that is my question.
I think the plays I like was either what Pathra did or just Hero Power Pass. I don't really like trade one way because I feel like if you're going trade one, then you're still very possibly setting yourself up for needing to brawl in the next couple turns anyway. Exactly. So you may as well just Hero Power, save the very valuable Restless Mummy, and then go for a brawl instead.
Yeah, generally just wondering, because it's
it's
tricky in this spot, isn't it? It's a weird play.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that go wrong with Patra's line of play, a la exactly this.
Or even, like I said, I think Divine Spirit in a fire.
Yeah.
It's like you just make a Death Wing on turn 4. Like, it's pretty scary.
But I think even then, because she still had the Spellbreaker, that was checked as well.
Yes, the Spellbreaker ticks the final box as far as I'm concerned.
Alutemu, one would have to imagine, is drawing closer and closer towards just saying, you know what, to heck with it. Yeah, it's a me. 12-12 Tolvir.
So, because Alutemu will be fully aware of Patra's deck, not only because the deck lists are open in this tournament, but also Alutemu is also playing that Warrior list, right? Does Alutemu actually spread his threats if he goes with the early push? So he could Divine Spirit, maybe not exactly this turn, but for example, Divine Spirit in a Fire 1, Extra Arms the other. And not go all in because he knows Silence is there, he knows Plague of Wrath is there, and one of them is injured. knows Whirlwind Plague of Wrath is available.
Yeah.
So do you ever just spread your threats to give you a bit more chance? Or do you think, as you've talked about previously, sometimes you've just got to put your foot down and say go?
Yeah, I'm not sure because there are not many, like having 2 decent sized minions, as long as they have high health, means you're not vulnerable to that much, like Super Collider, which, oh sorry, looking at it, Patra's not even running a Super Collider.
It's just
in
the
deck
plagues,
list.
right?
It's just, it opens you up a little bit more to Brawl, obviously can lose you a 50-50.
Right.
But I think going in on 1 minion is good here because there's no armor, so Shield Slam isn't a kill. It would have to be either exactly Whirlwind and a Plague of Wrath, or Spellbreaker, or a 50-50 Brawl.
Yeah.
Which is,
you know what? I'd take that for the game.
I think so
Yeah,
too.
if I was Alutemu, I'd be like, well, there's either one of these few sort of niche options, or I just win.
Yeah. And even if he doesn't just win, he's dealt 12 damage, which, despite the fact that the deck has no burst damage unless you have a board at all, it still gets you closer.
And there's, you know, many arms left for Alutemu to just push more damage this turn. So, like you said, Alutemu's brought Pathra all the way down to 12. He, more often than not, has priority on an attack the turn after as well. The permission to go face, I guess.
Job's done.
Job's done. Well, the taunt's already dead. Is this just arms, face?
Trying to look if there's any reason that you could go. It's not lethal anyway, is it? Because I wonder if you can go Pyromancer, Inner Fire, Extra Arms, kills the Taunt, and then you can push through for 10, I believe.
Wait, it's...
Right? If you go Pyromancer...
Oh, if you Inner Fire
Inner
first.
Fire,
Yep,
the
yep,
big
yep,
one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Inner Fire first, then arms.
Yeah.
Because if you did the other way around, it would be 11,
Which is
right?
definitely tempting. It goes very wrong in a multitude of ways, though.
What I do like is being aggressive now that Spellbreaker's been played. Because in my mind, I'd be
Yeah.
like, right, you've done your one answer, and Alutemu doesn't have card draw.
Yeah.
He got away with it yesterday versus Tom.
True.
But he doesn't have card draw. He doesn't have one summoned, so he has less card draw effectively in the deck. So I think just push is my answer.
Buffs up the Taunted version. Interesting. This isn't something I was expecting.
So kind of going halfway between, right?
Yeah, more of a halfway line. Just saying, I really want this board to stick.
Is this to help with Plague in any way?
Oh, good point.
Because now the trade Plague doesn't work, so it would need to be X Plague.
Well, the interesting thing is, though, he could still have played around Plague. So, say he the play I was looking at was you value trade with the 2/3 Taunted Engine Toldir into the Frightened Flunky, and then you buff up the 2/6 version with 2 copies of Extra Arms, push face for 6, which means you've still got a Taunt in the way of the Spellbreaker. So even if Plague of Wrath were to come down, the Spellbreaker would not be able to trade into the bigger of the 2 Toldirs, which means something else would be needed on top of a Plague of Wrath either way.
And I'd really like the bump into the 2/6 now with the Spellbreaker, because all that Pathra needs to look at is two Wardens in the hand. Just survive till next turn. I really like that play, yeah.
Nice and
Pretty
clean
heads
there
up.
for Pathra.
And now there's the second More Arms, or I guess the first More Arms, because the first one's Extra Arms. All right, whatever.
Even more arms.
But that's 4 damage, but that's only 4 damage. I guess it could be 6 with the Hero Power and Inner Fire.
Yeah. It would be funny if they printed, like, every time you play it, it just gives another card your hand, like, even more arms. Oh my god, how are there this many arms? Please stop with the arms.
The last one's like, okay, this is Jade Idol arms right now. Do you remember Jade Druid?
Do I remember Jade Druid, he says. Of course I remember Jade Druid.
What a deck.
What a horrible, spiteful
Oh, I thought you were
little
going to go
deck.
wholesome.
No.
What a wholesome deck.
What an honourable deck.
it just did what it did, right? It just next minion was going to be 1/1 bigger.
It was very stupid and very powerful.
Great to cast. What's he going to do this turn? He's going to make the same minions he did last turn, but it's a little bit bigger. What about next turn? Same.
Yeah. And with, well, when it first came out, it was 5 mana Plague, Innovate for 2. That was actually disgusting.
We thought Priest is bad.
It's a final hurrah here for Alutemu. Every point of damage he gets to face at this point, honestly, I don't know, it doesn't even feel that important because it's just about wrestling board control, trying to keep that as much as possible. And at this point, with no Bwonsamdi in his deck to be drawn, I think he's... What is he all in on? Finding Cleric and then Circle?
He's back on the Cleric Hero Power Circle.
Amit, something like that, yeah.
I think it's exactly like Cleric Hero Power to heal, draw Circle, Circle, go.
Because, you know, if... Yeah, I guess so. Because with Inner Fire in hand, and if the Pyromancer survives on board, say that Tomb Warden's just played on this turn, then maybe Alutemu can get a miracle draw, but... I mean, it looks like Pathra doesn't even want to go for the Tomb Warden on this turn.
Well, there's Whirlwind, Armor Up, Shield Slam, draw 2 cards. With the trade, of course.
It's a pretty good turn. That's pretty good, actually. It's using up an activator for a potential Plague of Wrath, but I think that's a little too
but it empties,
hypothetical.
Yeah, it empties the board, which is good.
Yeah.
Draws 2 cards, which might get you more activators, and also there's a Brawl in hand, right? So there is an emergency, like, you know, let's get gone. That was a good draw.
Is why you draw first.
Yeah,
the
that is a lesson needed.
Yeah, that was a disgusting turn there from Pathra. That feels like if it hasn't locked out the game, has locked out the game. Whoa, yeah, draws like that.
Yep, he's going to topsy-turvy straight onto the bottom right, I think.
With draws like these, who needs Alutenemies? Oh, watch it.
So the team is just like making plays, you know, like it's just like I can do this turn. Hoping the Blade Master's got stealth or something. You're like, wait, what?
It's like Monkey's trying to write Shakespeare. Like, eventually something good will happen if I just keep playing cards.
It's normally how Priest works. Just keep playing cards, you win the game.
Yeah.
But not to be in this one. As Pathra takes game number 1, beating down Alutemu's Priest with this Warrior. And again, confuses me about the no Omega Devastator in the list, but I will never argue with the purpose of the list, which is beating Priest, beating Druid, and getting some more consistency in just the hard removals, because I feel like there are... The game right now, there are decks that if you just shut down their initial waves, they just don't do much else.
Yep.
And even Druid, I'll call initial waves failures. And they don't really do much else after that. It's a very singular hold the board, keep the board win condition. Same with Zoo as well, to a certain extent.
Yeah, and once Warrior is able to go over the top of that, it's the difference between decks like Priest to decks like Highlander Hunter, because we've consistently seen Warrior win the early game, but then they're going Siamat, Zephyris, Bran, with high mains in there as well. They can keep going. Priest has no staying power. It's an incredibly powerful push, but that's it.
Yeah, Patra's only 1 game away from taking this series and, you know, stepping 1 further step away from relegation in Grandmasters this season. Stay tuned to find out if that's going to be the case.
What's up, Hearthstone fans? Welcome back to another episode of The Curve, where we draw the biggest headlines from this past weekend on Curve. I'm your host, Dan Frodancho. Let's do this. We're almost halfway through the season, and the first set of round robins are almost complete. In the Asia Pacific region, Tom 60229 has been reigning supreme until he suffered his first loss this weekend in a stunning upset. Tom lost his first match to Blitz Chung, who is currently the last place player in the division. Hot on Tom's heels is Glory from Japan, whose only loss is to Tom. In Division A, Chonsu currently sits undisputed at the top. The European region went through a roller coaster of emotions this weekend. Previous season winner Fino, who is winless this season, was about to beat Casey on Sunday, but missed his last attack due to the rope fizzling out amidst a myriad of card animations. A visibly frustrated Fino left his webcam briefly to cool off, but came back to accept his defeat like a pro. Equally classy was Casey in his interview as he verbally explained his contemplation of the situation because he knew it was a tough one as well.
I feel worse than when I would have lost, actually. Like, it's against Fino, one of my best friends and one of the best guys that I talked to the most in whole of 2018.
For someone who is known as one of the fastest players in Hearthstone, we got to see a rare occurrence of Casey wrestling with decision. We weren't drama-free either in the Americas region, as newcomer Gallon called out Nalgi Don for his terrible mentality in his winning interview the day before the two played against each other.
I'm calling you out, Nalgidon. I think your attitude to losing is really bad. You say a lot of stuff like, oh man, I got unlucky, my Dr. Boom was bottom 10 or whatever, and you don't look at where you messed up.
Nalgidon responded on Twitter to explain no hard feelings, but also his side as well, ultimately letting his play do all the talking on Sunday night. Nalgidon shut down the rookie 2-0, secured first place in his division, and then proceeded to make his own call-out. Nalgidon and his teammate Monsanto both chose to take their winning interview time to call out not another player, but the entire European region.
If you go back to watch the EU matches, there are a lot of mistakes as well, or better place to do so.
Oh, Europe? They think they're so good.
Are they?
Like they're not watching their own games. I don't know.
Yes! The tensions build as we look forward to an epic BlizzCon where we hope to see the cross-regional sparks fly. Outside of the three major Grandmasters region, there's one very big region that is also a huge part of the Hearthstone ecosystem, and that is, of course, China. In China, the Gold Team Championships have started back up, and currently the team Sun Ning is on top. You might recognize SN Jing from that team as he was on the world stage just recently in April. If you're looking for more information on the Chinese Hearthstone region, you can find out all the information at gold.blizzard.cn/GTC. In this week's meta moment, we want to highlight the Quest Druid. The deck has been growing in its popularity, and after not seeing an abundance of it in week 1, it's almost become a staple in weeks 2 and 3. The deck sports lots of legendary cards that have been hotly debated in the professional scene. Arguments both for and against King Feoris have been made, and the same goes for other legendaries like Elise the Enlightened and to a lesser degree, even Cenarius. But no matter how you build a deck, the core of it remains the same, as the completed quest provides very powerful cards because of the Choose One combined abilities. Cards like Hidden Oasis, Starfall, Oasis Surger, Nourish, Wardru Lodi become game changers that can swing the board dramatically in one turn. If you haven't seen the deck in action, check out the Just Saiyan vs. Bloody Face series to see a good example of how the deck can be creatively and powerfully utilized. Another interesting note in Asia Pacific, Shaxi, very insistent on putting Malygos in his Druid decks and going as far as to protect this deck, not like his opponents even wanted to ban it anyways, and still getting the wins. If you missed any of the Grandmasters action, you can check out the VODs on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Hearthstone Esports. Grandmasters resumes this weekend, so don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's it for us. We'll see you in the chat room.
We return to game number 2 between Pathra and Alutemu. Going to be deciding who takes the win here, and it's a pretty important one, mainly for Pathra, I think. I mean, Alutemu's just doing okay, I think, at the moment. He's finally got a win yesterday, which was good, so he's looking all right. But Pathra is not. Patra's rocking the bottom of the division along with Blitzchung, and they're currently even on score. So the second one of them takes that win and the other one doesn't, that just takes a nice step away from relegation.
That's right. But even though we saw both of these players playing yesterday, despite the fact that Pathra took a loss and Alutemu took a win, I'd say they both were playing at about the same level, which is to say not up to their usual standard.
Yep.
We saw both players making quite basic mistakes, actually, of just roping out the turn and not fitting in all the things that they wanted to do, which is to an extent understandable. They were difficult turns. It was not necessarily quite so easy to find what you wanted to do. But for these players who I hold to such a high standard, this is Grandmasters. I think I want to see a little bit more from them, which is why the point I'm coming around to is that if Pathra is going to be taking a win, I think against the way that Alutemu has been playing the last week or two, she's in with actually a pretty good shot.
Yeah, and I think what's important is something I've spoken to you about as well is what I want from the Grandmasters across all regions actually is because there's just notably a lot of players who are messing up pretty consistently, then bring your game all the way just back to basics. Just play just basic but solid Hearthstone, right? Just make your turns, get them done properly, think about your turns as much much as you can, but don't flirt with the rope, right? That's the problem. If that starts burning, you've still not even made a decision on what you want to do in the turn, then you're in trouble. You need to just get ready and make the play. I think Tom is one of the best players at doing that. Tom sits there, stares at the screen for 60 seconds, moves forward, plays his turn.
Yeah.
Done. Next. And I think that is something that more players need to replicate, just to get that extra bit of consistency. Because imagine if we see players just, roping, missing things, so on and so on, and you're the one who isn't. You'll just win more games.
Yeah,
That's just true. It's crazy. Basic Hearthstone is what I like to see. But game number 2, we do see the rope a little bit more different, a little bit more manageable when there's only a very limited amount of actions you can make on turn 1. But tough actions anyway. These early turns are going to make or break the game, I feel.
Wow, we see Flame Imp drawn on 1, but not being played. Do you like that, to see the...
You mean to coin out instead?
Well, just to not play the Flame Imp on 1 here.
Well...
Or even just coin Flame Imp. Like, even if Alutemu goes heal your face and then trade away the Light Warden, I think you're pretty happy with that as Pathra.
I think you might only be happy based on what Alutemu's follow-up is the next turn, right?
Fair enough.
Because
fair
Flame Imp at the moment for Pathra is the only good minion. Others are 1-mana 1/1s and the Voidwalker, of course.
That's fair.
So I think I actually would have gone all the way and just coined Flame Imp out and said I have 2 Abusive Sergeants, or Abusive Sergeant and a Spirit Bomb next turn.
Actually, maybe this was just the best play from Pathra, because if you go Voidwalker coin Flame Imp, she can, Alutemu can heal your face as Pathra and then take a value trade on the Voidwalker, which is like the worst outcome for you.
Yeah, I think because the way I would envision that is your opponent's done heal hero power to take the value trade. You use next turn 1-mana Spirit Bomb and play winning 1-drops and much damage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but she's just value traded your Voidwalker. Why not just play Flame Imp in that instance then?
Because in that way you get to keep a Flame Imp on the board and push 5 next turn.
I guess so, yeah.
And because you've been healed, your Spirit Bomb isn't that bad.
Yeah, you're too... Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I guess so.
You kind of both take a slow turn, but the outcome of you both taking a bad turn is that you have a Flame Imp and they don't. Is the way I would see
I see your point.
The road path.
I think that's fine, but I think Patra's actually managed to find the best
I think this
of both
turned out very
worlds
well.
here.
This has turned out very, very well.
She's able to get the Flame Imp online. Granted, it's a turn late, so she misses 3 damage with this line, but keeping a Voidwalker in play is a big deal.
And I honestly, in this matchup, do not think racing is particularly the way to win.
Just lock down board.
Yeah, I don't think the 3 damage is going to make that much difference.
Yeah.
Just having a cursory glance over Patra's list, she isn't playing Leroy, she isn't playing Soulfires, so she's not even playing a burst version, right?
Yeah.
It's all board. So make sure you keep it. And yeah, this has worked out really well. Now Alutemu is in a bit of a problem.
Bit of a pickle. He of course has the play of Pyrotopsy as like a perfectly good play on this turn to kill off 2 of the minions. Yeah, could even play Light Warden, but is that a winning play is the question he of course needs to ask. Does he need to set up for, like how far behind does he think he is? Does he need to set up for Power Word Shield off the top into another Power Word Shield after that so that he can go Pyromancer double sweep? Like, how does he evaluate his own situation?
There's also Light Warden heal the Voidwalker, right?
Yeah.
Which is like a weird option, but the Light Warden either 2-for-1s the Voidwalkers.
Well, I think you'd heal your opponent's face instead in that instance.
I guess the damage doesn't matter, does it? Your opponent's health doesn't really matter.
But I think that's probably what he was considering the most, because I think with all the stuff that he could have done on this turn, the general consensus that he came to, or general conclusion he came to, which I agree with him on, is just doing Pyromancer this turn is not a game-winning play. He will lose eventually if he does
Which
that.
is why, yeah, my focus was, along with
Absolutely.
I think Alutemu's on Light Warden. Even if Light Warden Arms comes down next turn, that's just not a bad minion.
Not terrible, yeah.
And you keep an Arms, so you're not really losing a spell.
Yeah.
You know, for the Pyro on turn 5, so it can be like Pyro, Arms, Topsy.
Yeah.
Worst on turn 5. And now, funnily enough, Alutemu's skip has probably gave Pathra pause to just dumping a hand on the board and doing the zoo thing. So both players kind of taking it slow, because one thing that I think is fair enough that Pathra may be thinking about is, well, if Alutemu's just passed, what's his hand?
Right.
And if his hand is remotely Pyromancer,
Yeah.
then I ain't going to play more cheap, low health minions, because that's just playing into it.
And of course, with double Abusive Sergeant in hand, they have an immediate effect and therefore don't need to be played out just for the 1/1 stat.
And like I said, the damage to face doesn't actually really matter.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
If Amet comes down, boof, boof, you can just double buff it up and then trade in nice and easy. If Psychopomp comes down, it's maybe bad, but probably not that bad unless they get the 12 here.
I was honestly wondering whether Alutemu just waits again, but this is a full board clear, and he keeps the Pyro and draws a card. But there was just a small thought of, well, if my Zoo opponent's not playing more stuff, can I just peel and pass again?
Both players just do nothing.
Yeah,
for
they
20
just
turns.
stare at each other, and it's like, okay.
Well, I'm not going to do anything. I don't know. What do you want to do?
It's like the weirdest game of chicken ever. Oh, that's a card.
That is one heck of a card. And I think maybe we'll disincentivize Alutemu from even playing the Light Warden,
I don't
right?
think the Light Warden needs to come down right now.
Because otherwise he would have slammed it right away, but
Oh,
wow.
okay.
This does give them the opportunity to, first of all, have a Light Warden down and then go extra arms heal. So it's a more flexible line of play, but probably a lower overall power level line of play.
My mana utilization against Zoo pretty good. Spend your
True,
mana, get stuff
yeah.
down on the board. It makes Zoo, makes Patra's turn a little bit more awkward now. You look at it with Juggler, it was 2 juggles after
Yep.
hit. Now she can't actually get 4, so it makes the turn worse.
This feels a lot more like old school Season 1 Alutemu we're seeing here, where for me at least, his biggest strength as a player was excellent realization of every turn, knowing exactly what his game plan was. Not just being able to make what is the strongest play this turn, but okay, how am I actually winning this game? Because as we saw, turn 3, he could have made a pretty strong play to clear off most of the board, but he said, this is not how I win the game, setting up for something more powerful, and he drew his out and he played it. And I think that was a great realization of the situation he was in.
These 2 abusives are causing trouble.
Yeah, they're pretty bad.
Patra. But again, is this just maybe like tap Direwolf and try and just get a bigger turn next turn with the juggle? It's tough. Patra instead going for arguably the strongest board she could make.
Ooh, second Pyromancer. How does that factor in? It's probably it's just bad, right?
Yeah, it kills everything.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could go like heal in the next round
Not
as well,
enough
but there's
mana,
not enough
yeah.
mana. Yeah. So it's a 4 health Pyromancer, so healing it up, value trading, and then even you can heal it up, value trade into the Wolf, value trade into the Crystallizer as well, and then even just play the other Pyromancer.
What about the heal extra arms on the 1/2?
Okay.
And then just ignore the Crystallizer and hit him in the face, because Patra's kind of running out of health and
yeah.
she can't keep tapping, and clearly she doesn't have strong plays
It's an
because
interesting play.
every turn has been very weird, right, in this game. So what about, yeah, you can heal up, this kills off the, you can make the trade on the board anyway, and this just pushes a ton of damage to face. It's just a 5/4 on the board. Okay, 5/3.
I don't know if that's as important though. I think I like taking the value trades here as Alutemu. Yeah, I think Pathra has very limited abilities to come back into
So
the game.
what's the drawback
The drawback of not
of
trading?
leaving the minion up? Like, what's going to happen? I mean, we can obviously double abusive, of course, but generally, what are you worried about? Is it just that?
I mean, honestly, I don't think it's that hard of a read for Alutemu to make at this point.
Okay.
One of them was kept in the hand at the start, and I'm trying to think, if he's been doing really good hand reading, it was Voidwalker and Abusive Sergeant kept in the mulligan. What is he putting that other card on that wasn't the Voidwalker that's been kept but not played until now? Honestly, given there's been 2 cards sitting there since the start of the game, I think he's got a pretty good read that it's either Abusive Sergeant or Sea Giant. And if it's Sea Giant, he wants to clear off the board as much as possible.
And also, if it's Sea Giant, it's a very weird keep in this matchup.
Exactly.
Right? Because
yeah.
the only thing I would be thinking is Vulture, but I think that would have come down.
Or the one that wasn't kept could be Sea Giant.
Ah,
He
that's
could put
true,
him on
that's
his back.
true.
But yeah, I think generally he's just in a good spot if he keeps trading because he has Amet. He has the ultimate play in the next few turns. Even if it's just now, Amet Pyromancer is disgustingly powerful.
So is this, though. Really? Okay, come on, Darren. Come on. 7 damage into a knife juggler? It could have been 9 to face with that extra arms. 7 damage!
Yeah.
And surely it's likely to die now. It's 6 mana Zoo turn with cards they've not played.
I think he's accepting that it dies now, but just saying
okay.
next turn, like, more arms, Pyromancer, Inner Fire, like... I mean, the other thing I was looking at was going for some kind of Pyromancer, more arms, Inner Fire play to sweep up the board. But I think that means that, yeah, either the Pyromancer or the Light Warden would have had to have died. So, yeah, I think this is probably just better.
I was just looking at more arms, he'll whack him in the face. Because how does it die? It's pretty... I guess it could. It's just fairly difficult.
I think that one was much closer.
Maybe I'm too face-orientated.
You are a player at your heart. You know One Direction.
Don't really know the music that well, actually.
I was trying to make a joke there. I literally can't think of a single One Direction song.
No, I've got nothing.
Yeah.
I'm proud of that.
I must have heard some of these songs before. My girlfriend would be quite disappointed in me.
Yeah. Take that if I were you. I'm proud.
Yeah, take that. No, that's
yeah.
different story.
I'll say, if Alutemu is playing Psycho Pump when there's an Amit down, he must have an insanely powerful turn plan because Psycho Pump with Amit is
the juice.
Yeah.
The absolute
so
juice.
overpowered.
It's disgusting.
So
I mean, this is just over at this point. And this is what I think Alutemu was correctly playing to, because sorry, I'm stuttering over myself. Psycho Pump was the best card he could have got, obviously, after an Ame had come down. But any minion, when it has 7 health, is more than good enough to lock out the game versus Zoo, I think.
Yeah, I guess if you know Pathra's deck, which of course they do, open deck lists across the board here in Grandmasters, there's no Leroy, there's no burst, so Pathra needs to have won the board,
yes,
or she will just lose. And due to that, all Alutemu has to do is this, right? Just never lose the board, which means he never loses the game.
And I think this was just a excellent showcase of Alutemu's, as I said, biggest skill set, which is just knowing what is likely to happen if he plays in a certain way. If he holds on to the Wild Pyro for a couple of turns, he will be more likely to clear the board, so he can lock it down. As soon as he draw Amit, he just realized, again, what's my long-term plan? Stick Amit, the game's over.
Also, a special new game we have this week of how many Grandmasters players do not read the messages they get sent about not using golden versions of Lackey Generations because of the current visual bug, as you can see. We apologize that to the viewers.
That is Titanic Lackey.
Blame the players.
I'm just saying, the other regions have been alright. Asia Pacific has been negligent, to say the least.
No. The other
have they been
regions
bad
have
as
not
well?
been okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I saw some that were alright.
No, 2 of the players in Europe definitely were playing a mirror match with Lackeys, and both of them had golden Lackey generators.
Heal up, bish bash bosh. Easy.
And that looks like the game to me there.
Does indeed. Equalizing 1-1. The Priest taking a victory here. Not a repeat of what we saw from, I think it was Ball Control yesterday, where it was 2 losses with the Priest, which always feels horrendous when, as you say, the meme is already amongst the players that Priest is a free win. They're almost playing best of 1, right? Because once the Priests are both won, you're then just duking out for who can take the second win. But, of course, Pathra, with her Priest banned away, now is to try and take a win with one of her remaining 2 decks, which is, I believe, her Shielded Druid, which so far has not been played. Maybe she was waiting for the Priest to take the win first, get that out of the way, given this is Conquest, then she can go in with the Druid, given that's a very poor matchup. Or maybe she's just going to stick with this Zoo.
Yeah, and I guess that comes into it a little bit, is where you have to think about mindset of players along with ideas and thoughts on queue order. Is Alutemu really going to risk the game point of the series, but with not queuing Priest when it's by far his highest overall win rate deck?
Yeah.
So there's just a weird sort of mind games going on there. But yes, it has gone 1-1 now, which means the players just have a couple of decks to choose from each, and we'll be getting that game set up very, very quickly. And I think that game was actually pretty well played. I think
very
overall
well
from
played.
both
Yeah.
players, actually. I think that Alutemu obviously had the benefit of playing well and playing Priest, which normally equals a win.
Yeah.
Whereas Pathra, I think there was some pretty heads-up plays actually from Pathra, especially early game,
Yes.
of just how to navigate the first couple of turns worked really well.
Yeah.
The Spirit Bomb coming in very handy, which it is known to do now. It's deemed quite powerful removal tool. And yeah, I think it's just one of those things where the second Amma is not included in that equation, the game can look very, very different because Amma is so oppressively powerful when played alongside other minions within the same few turns.
Yeah.
And certain classes just cannot answer. Most classes, apart from maybe Warrior, just cannot answer a board of 7 health minions. Just the answers don't exist in the deck.
It's true. I think, yeah, Pathra did play that very, very well there in that first game. The thinking was whether she should have played just Flame Imp turn 1, but I think because her follow-up was so weak, it was really only Abusive Sergeant plus Voidwalker on an empty board, which feels terrible against a potential Blade Master. I think if she'd had Coin Nephicet, then Flame Imp would absolutely have been the play.
Oh, yeah.
Or
that,
just
we
anything to play.
changed the
Even
discussion.
Coin Evil Recruiter onto an empty board, I still think that Flame Imp would have been the play. This way, though, I think she realized that her follow-up was so weak that she had to just throw out the Voidwalker and then try and clear up next turn with the bomb.
Yeah, a lot of that, the early game, I feel, was less about getting ahead and more about keeping even with your opponent, right? It's less like, oh, well, my hand doesn't really get me anywhere, but how about I just don't let my opponent get anywhere? We keep it even, and because you're playing Zoo, you can reliably draw cards, and you're pretty powerful in the early game. But let's move on to game number 3. Pathra on the bottom on the Zoo again, but now with a Diseased Vulture locked, loaded, and ready to go. Alutemu on the top on the Quest Shaman.
Yeah, this is the expected deck for both of these players because Pathra, with her Druid, if she lines it up against the Warlock, the Druid lines up against the Warlock Zoo from Alutemu, I think that's obviously pretty terrible. Against the Battlecry Quest Shaman, it's also quite bad. So Alutemu then puts Pathra on playing the Zoo and thinks, I'd rather take the Quest Shaman than a 50-50 with my version of Zoo. I wonder if then Pathra should have then mind games that are a level deeper and gone with the Druid, which is probably a better matchup against Quest Shaman than the Warlock is.
Do you think?
Not by much, but I think slightly better.
I've not played this matchup tons myself, but
Do you think it's all right for the
I think I might have lent towards the Zoo maybe.
Really?
Because I feel like all the early game from the Shaman is very weak understated minions. All the early game from the Zoo is normally fairly overstated minions a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So it means that if you grab that early game, then you could kind of just run away with it. Of course, the Shaman has lackeys that can mess around, and they have the Elementals, and I guess MC Tech is the third one that has impact. But I just feel like, for example, what play does Alutemu has that beats a Voidwalker? There just kind of isn't anything that good, right? You know what I mean? There's no good answer to the minions early game.
Which is where we need to get into being very clear about what our definitions are. Like in terms of which deck wins the early game, what are we talking about when we win early game? Because turns 1, 2, maybe 3, absolutely the Zoo runs away the vast majority of the time. But the Shaman has the much more powerful comeback mechanisms, whereas Zoo is very lacking in terms of that. For the Shaman, we're obviously talking about the Sandstorm Elemental, all the lackeys, and then the big daddy himself of swinging back boards, the Mogu Flesh Shaper, especially if you can couple it with a Witchy Lackey or a Mutate.
And then we just arrive at the point of, is the stronger early game from Zoo enough to actually carry the game? And that's the question, isn't it? And that's what we're going to find out the answer to, at least in this game. But I feel this is very, very powerful because the Elementals are only good early game when you have other minions to chip the board. Because right now, what's that Sandstorm Elemental do?
Right, yeah.
Nothing.
It's not the cornerstone of the plan.
So because really, the Shaman only fights back once the quest is live, I feel. Outside of exactly Mogu, Mutate, but that's the caveat in every matchup.
Yeah. It's a caveat you have to bear in mind, though. It's not like a cheesy once in a lifetime.
No, of course, that's what I mean. It's in every matchup
often.
and often in games because they play for it as well. But I think what I'd like to see is just Patra's choosing where this Voidwalker is going to go. Thinking about any lackeys going to make this worse. I think the only lackeys that make it worse are ones that wouldn't match if you traded anyway.
Yeah, and she's counting up Mogu as well. She'll realize, of course, if she trades, Mogu will still be playable.
So take the damage.
Exactly, yeah. I think it's not worth to lose the damage here. If it was exactly making Mogu not playable, I would definitely recommend it. but in this instance, I think it's worth it. As
Well, funnily enough, this is probably the hardest punish.
yeah, this is
might
going to
just
go
win.
horrendously
Because
wrong
the,
for Pathra.
The Mogu can trade, and then
Yep.
every minion on the board nearly can
Yep.
attack because they're going to give each other rush, and they're going to have enough attack to kill off the juggler, kill off the direwolf. So this is
Yes.
such a massive swing on board, and this doesn't. I feel that this specifically does not consistently happen. Because if you look, imagine the lackeys weren't exactly rush. Yes, they could be deal 2, of course, but the fact that they're both in board impact lackeys right now is tough, because if they weren't, then most of Patra's board lives, but now most of Patra's board dies.
Oh, I fully appreciate this was an incredible hand for Alutemu. He drew the stuff, which obviously does not usually happen. But I feel like with this Shaman deck, like I was saying, Quest Shaman now feels like the poster child for consistency at this point. In terms of the early game, at least, there's so many cheap cards that you're happy to hit at the start of the game that just give you something to do against these aggressive decks.
And like double Sludge Slurper, Mogu is just amazing. Along with, again, the Cable Rat, which gives you time to just do a little bit more as well. So now uphill climb for Patra. This is a tough one. At least there was no Mutate. Silver lining.
Yeah, no Mutate, no Witchy Lackey. I think either one of those would have been pretty close to a lock. But
Outside of High Week.
Outside of Hyrik, yes. One should always add that addendum. I actually dusted Hyrik this morning when I was trying to make...
Oh, really?
Yeah, so...
Wait, what were you trying to build?
Purple was playing a...
Oh, the plot twist?
Plot twist Warlock, yeah. And I thought, you know what? This looks fun.
I was watching
And
that.
I didn't have the quest craft.
I watched that for one game, and as soon as the game ended, because I was typing in chat,
Yeah.
Sottle messaged me, was like, Raven, just so you know, this is how this game always plays out when he's playing it. He just beats people with just a whole load of rubbish cards.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, but it looks funny.
Yeah.
He's like, I think it was more of a recommendation to saying the deck's bad, but all I took it was, that just sounds funny to me, so I want to try it.
Everyone in the stream who came in just saying, like, what is this pile of rubbish? And you'd be like, I have an 80% win rate in top
And
legend.
you're like, damn it, Purple.
Stop being
you.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Purple is one of the masters of just winning with absolute garbage decks.
Oh, undeniably. He can probably win with good decks, but I'm not sure if I've ever actually seen him do that.
Dreamhack that he won with
He played good decks then.
Malygos / Dragon Warlock. That was a deck, because he played it
That was a deck.
slightly before it was cool. Now though, while we've been, maybe reminiscing, maybe not, Patra's actually done a great job of fighting back on the board here. I thought this would have looked a lot worse
Yeah.
going forward. Like, of course, Alutemu has a good play with that Sandstorm Elemental this turn. But if he does, he has a mediocre follow-up. Whereas if he doesn't, he can play the Former Champ next turn.
Which means his play is just hero power and then trade into the wolf.
What if he...
It's not that bad.
I think I like holding, play the Lackey. Lackey trade into 2/3, the Lackey challenges the
interesting.
Wolf. It procs the quest, which means you can hero power Sandstorm the turn after. Or at least have it available. Whereas now, Alutemu can't hero power Sandstorm unless he draws the next one. And that's a huge deal. Deal 2 versus deal 1.
True. That is true.
Because now, his next turn is Life Drinker or Lackey, which I feel is, again, kind of low power. Whereas I feel like if you just left a Direwolf on there, it's not the end of the world. The Lackey challenges it.
I feel like Goblin Lackey could also be very, very good as the game progresses, though. Like it's not something I want to just throw
Better
away.
than Sandstorm, though? I can't agree with you that it's better than Sandstorm.
Maybe. Like, what are you afraid of here from Pathra? It's not necessarily going wide here. It's Vulture sticking, I think, that you're afraid of. It's maybe Sea Giant sticking, something like that I think you're much more afraid of from Pathra, which makes the rush ability of Goblin Lackey, I think, a bit more powerful.
Okay.
Maybe.
We'll agree to disagree on that one.
Fair enough. Interesting decision now as to whether Alutemu goes Lackey Bog Slosher or Bog Slosher Lackey. They both have their benefits, or Life
I
Drinker.
think just Life Drinker's fine, right?
I think I like Lackey then Bog Slosher because the 1/1 is probably not that bad. I think your opponent has represented that Pathra does not have Evil Recruiter, and therefore next turn you can go Former Champ, buffed up Lackey, rush in either the 5/5 or the 1/1.
Okay.
Maybe that's too fancy though. I'm
wondering whether you want to say Former Champ 1 extra turn and just get two
Hero
5/5s
power.
against Zoo.
That's obviously good.
I mean, it all depends on what he draws, of course.
Yeah.
I think the simple play is decent here. You gain the heal from the life drinker. 3/3 easily takes down a 1/1. Don't get overly fancy. Maybe there's a bounce on the life drinker next turn, and that bridges the gap.
Sure.
Because Pathra needs board. If you just keep healing out of range, I mean, that's a good one.
Yeah. Terrible play there from Alutemu to not kill off the lackey, by the way.
Oh yeah, in the play you didn't want him to do.
Yeah. I think if you listen back, you'll clearly hear that I thought you should kill off the lackey every time.
Yeah.
So many possibilities.
So does Pathra just kind of splurge on the board now? Just play stuff? Because Elemental's gone. Alutemu's clearly not got... Well, his hand was okay, but he's not exactly displaying insane hands. And with the
clearly
Elemental
not.
and all those lackey generators kind of being used up, I think Pathra just goes, let's go.
I
Chuck
agree.
it all on one Mogu's been used.
Yeah.
Go.
Just trying to dominate the board now as much as possible.
I think, like, play all your one-drops as well. Oh, did she miss damage there?
No, she attacked first, right?
No, but she could have abused.
Oh.
Like, the way I see the turn is just abusive Mekaru, Grim
Sorry.
Rally, go.
Yeah.
Obviously, Patra's not going to do that, so there was no missed damage because she didn't want to.
Yeah,
But I think I would have just gone, here's my hand, can you beat this?
I think that was saving face there by Pathra, because it's still an incorrect turn if you want to look at it objectively, because
Just
she
tap
should have tapped
second,
first. Exactly right. I mean, it's small stuff, but it's
Yeah.
minor optimization.
And don't get me
it was
wrong,
not a perfect turn.
Tapping into a Vulture, pretty good tap. But if she tapped into Vulture first, then she would have been able to play it. Not that she would have this turn.
Yeah, I think it would have still held.
But for me, I think just abusive Mekaru Grim Rally. Like, obviously with the you buff as well. You do the demon as well, of course.
Yeah, would you
but like,
Grim Rally the abusive, I guess, to play around MCT?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, why not? And you keep a death rattle, why not?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, like, imagine the board and more damage is pushed. Like, and then tap to your
I
heart's
don't know.
content next turn. Like,
I honestly don't know. Like, tap to your heart's content. Like, on average, if that board gets dealt with, I think you can just give up at that point. Like, if you go
Sure.
all in, that's not to say that it's wrong at all.
yeah.
But
But like, what would it be? A 6/6, a 4/4, and a 2/2, and you pushed
yeah.
what? 3 instead of 1. I like those numbers.
Yeah. It's working out well for Pathra here, though, in this
Oh.
particular instance with Vulture and Flame him. Whoa. It's working
The
out
big boy.
very well here for Pathra.
It's a King Mukla and okay, a 3/3 is just completely middle of the line. I think that's fine.
Next she needs the baby bear of a 1/1 Desert Hare.
And now the problem.
There's still strong plays that can come through from Alutemu, like Hero Power Lackey is a 5/5 and then Wasp can take out the Vulture, but
I don't think he can.
This is Damahe.
Wasp the 5/5, right?
the 3/5, sorry. I mean,
Yeah, I was gonna say the Vulture is the uber
Yes,
priority
yeah,
over the. Sorry,
absolutely.
I thought you said 5/5. That's
I must have misspoke.
well, don't next time. Okay,
Just speak well, forehead.
it's not hard, idiot. It actually is really hard.
Yes, it is.
To
you
sound
remind
like
me-
you know what you're talking about for hours on end is very difficult.
What class is Pathra playing against here? Speaking of how difficult it is to speak and make sense,
The one that owns Thrall Mall, I think. It's Thrall.
the mayor of Thrall Mall.
Good times.
Super tough choice here for Alutemu and Pathra. This is the situation she's felt in. It felt like she's been in a couple of times where she's so close to taking the victory here, but it could all just be seized away at the last minute. But I think this one's looking very good for her.
It's lethal, right? Wait, what? Have I miscounted? The 6, 11, 12,
It
13,
has to be
15.
now. Yeah, she sees it.
Maybe it was one off actually before the lackey. Anyway,
She's got it now.
that's lethal.
There we go.
So Pathra is going to take the win over Alutemu, and that was an important one, Derek.
Absolutely huge, because at this point, qualification through to the top 4 to get through to playoffs is not impossible, I believe, for Pathra at this point. There's still 3 weeks left. That's 6 more matches that she has to play, but it is looking more and more difficult. The real thing here for Pathra is it just gets her closer and further away from that relegation spot, which is priority number 1 for her at the moment, and getting a very well-deserved win here in what was some pretty genius zoo play, I think, there from her. Is very important.
Yeah, and also it was just, I think it was solid from both games, even though, of course, Pathra lost the previous game against Priest.
Yep.
And I think it's definitely tough to lose that game and then cue Zoo again and be like, okay, game number 2, all or nothing on this one. And she did pull it off. And Alutemu, I think, overall should still be happy with this week. He beat Tom, which is a pretty solid victory in itself. He sort of closes the gap between the middle and the top, you could argue. So he's done that. Obviously, he would have liked to have beat Pathra and moved even further up on the table. But I think a one-on-one, when one of those victories is against someone who was in front of you, is actually a pretty solid week and nothing to be upset about. But the big deal is Pathra just getting a win there has huge implications for Blitzchung, of course.
That's right. And also for Alutemu, a 4-4 record, with the way that Division B is shaking out with Blitzchung and Pathra so low down, and the top, Glory doing so well.
Yep.
Sorry, I can't remember which division he was in. Glory right there up at the top. It's looking like an even score may be good enough to get you through.
It's going to be close.
Yeah, 7 and 7 could get there.
Yeah, even if it's just that 4th spot. As we said last season, it was top 3 that made the qualifiers into playoffs. Now it's top 4, which means even if you just slide in at 4th, so like basically, okay, kind of just above middle of the group, I suppose, then that's enough. If you just do just above middle, you've made it to playoffs. And in playoffs, we don't really care about what you did in the season anymore. You made it to playoffs, and then that's a completely separate thing, right? You play through your group, and then if you win, you're through to the global finals.
Yes, that's not entirely true, because in the GSL groups that we're doing, 4th place takes an automatic loss to 1st place.
Oh, right, sorry.
So
okay.
it's still a downside to coming 4th. If you come 1st, there's a benefit. 2nd and 3rd are neutral.
Right.
But you're through to playoffs. That's the main thing. You've still got a chance to get through to BlizzCon.
Yeah, so it's going to be super important as we see that continue and weeks go on.
Yep.
And there's only, like you said, there's only a few matches left for all these players.
It's true.
See, I feel tense about it,
Yep.
and I'm not playing. It's crazy. Like, these players must be feeling a lot of pressure as the weeks tick on. Maybe even feeling pressure from week 1, but now I can only imagine.
I know, and we're seeing a lot of players who I would not traditionally expect to see it from them, making mistakes in terms of the things that are clearly induced by stress, because there's certain mistakes you can make in Hearthstone that come from lack of practice. We saw this, with Psycho yesterday being called out by Casey, 2 players who are very, very good friends, and clearly Casey has a lot of respect for Psycho, but saying you're not playing enough, and that's why you don't understand these metagame aspects of the matchups.
Just experience it in-game, right?
You've got to be both playing well and have a good mindset.
Okay, well, Pathra is ready, I believe, so we're just going to check. Can you hear us, Pathra?
Hi guys, I can hear you.
Hey.
Awesome. First off, congratulations, of course, on the win. Good job. And I just want to start off just by asking about, cause something me and Derek discussed a lot, was your shield and ban strategy for this matchup. Because on the surface, at least, the Druid shield looks weird when you consider the lineup you were against in form of Alutemu. So do you want to just talk us through what was going through your mind?
Okay, so Alutemu and Glory, I think they're both Japanese players, and their deck lists were exactly the same, I think, card for card.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so I think they're practice partners, and whatever I do in the first game, like Alutemu probably will know what I'm going to do. So maybe, right? And so against Glory, I ended up picking Warrior, and he protected Warrior. And so I was like, okay, maybe they both protect Warrior.
Right.
And so this time I protected Druid, and then he protected Priest. So I was like, oh. Okay. And
Disaster.
Yeah.
But it's almost as if I reverse protected my Warrior, because I ended up having my Warrior, and then I just didn't play my Druid. So it worked out.
Yeah, I think in a like you said, in a weird roundabout way, you got to play Warrior, which I think was the one of the different decks we've seen submitted this week. Just want to ask you about that Warrior as well. Like, that list has kind of just popped up almost out of nowhere. Where's that come from? Because we've seen quite a lot of players just submit it. And what's the overall idea of the list?
Oh, which list exactly?
The Control Warrior. With the no Devastators, the Whirlwind, and everything.
Well,
That's a story.
you asked Tyler the other day. I just copied Hunter Ace's
Okay.
warrior.
Fair. There's nothing wrong with honesty.
It's good. I think
It is
he
good.
prepared a really good control warrior that beats Priest and what else? I think it was another one that I think it's really, really good against Priest, but I know that there's no Elysiana, so it loses to the Warrior Mirror and it loses to Shaman a little bit because Elysiana actually helps the Shaman matchup. But it's also better against OTK Paladin because it's got the two weapons that give you 6 armor, and all that armor is pretty good.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so talking a little bit less about, I guess, the specifics of your lineup, it's unfortunately been a little bit of a while since we've been able to talk to you in interview. So just, I want to know just like your thoughts on what's happened so far. Obviously, it hasn't gone as well as you would have expected, or we would have expected as well from you. Like, just what's changed this week to lead to a win, and I guess just anything that you've wanted to say over the past few weeks but haven't had the chance to address the stream about.
I think this game turned out pretty well for me because sometimes I feel like it's all about like the protecting and the banning and the queue orders, and this one just landed perfectly for me. But I feel like every week I'm always thinking like what's going to be happening in the APAC region. I noticed like a few players don't bring Druid anymore, and it's so different compared to other regions. Like in the other regions, like in NA and EU, they're not bringing Warrior. So it's just interesting to see that, there's just different things going on in different regions.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to keep up with for us as well, because we look obviously a lot of EU and America's regions. Look at all the Malagos Druid across the way in the other regions, and there's just 0 here, so very difficult to keep up with. But we will let you go after we've just grilled you on the questions, Pathra. So good job on the win, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Okay, well, it seemed to make sense, and I was sure that even though the Druid ban looked weird, there has to be a reason, right, to us. And fair enough if she tried to do the counter what Glory did.
Yeah.
And quite rightly, Glory and Alutemu submit the same lists, I think, almost every week so far in GM.
Yeah, I think there's like a card difference between the two lineups
so
this week.
honestly, it's no stretch to think, well, if the lists are the same, the strategy should be the same, so to speak. So, yeah, it kind of does make sense. And I think most importantly, she got to play Warrior, which was pretty impactful in the matchup.
Yeah, and you've got to see between Alutemu and Glory, despite their clearly practicing together and bringing almost identical deck lists week after week, their play has been, I think, represented a little bit more highly by Glory, right up at the top of the table. Alutemu had a couple of blips in his gameplay. Felt a lot stronger today, it's worth saying. I liked a lot of what I saw. Didn't come away with the victory. But for Pathra there, I think, like we were saying, Alutemu consistently protecting Priest. I think that's more of an indication as to what he's going to employ in his picking and banning strategy than what Glory has been doing.
Right, yeah, I think he just values Priest very, very highly. It's like, no, I want to play this deck. But let's move on to match